Hello? I can't hear you.
Wait, how about now? I can't see me. Here you are.
Okay, can everybody hear me now? Can hear me, Mike? Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. I can't see anybody.
You can't?
Oh, there. Now I can. Okay.
Okay, it's always something you're doing, just know.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, how could it be any other way? It's all up to me.
That's right. And there is no me, so you don't have to worry so much about that. This is a continuation since I got Mike on and he wasn't with us for several weeks, but it's always wonderful to have you. We are in the middle of moving into practical applications of relative bodhicitta. Relative bodhicitta is awakened heart mind, real time, real life right now. And how we practice that in the wide open luminous space, which we have to first create. We have to really shed first through shamatha practice, through vipassana practice. We have a first work before we get to these Mahayana teachings of relative and ultimate bodhicitta. Because if we were just joking with Mike, but it's so really true, if we grab or cling or solidify or fixate, what are all these words? Identify with some sense of solid self, right? If you solidify into some sense, perception of this solid existing self, which of course we know from all of our practice is simply a delusion. But when we grab that, the Tonglen practice will become what? Suffering, right? You will choke. The solid self will choke in the face of this relative bodhicitta, the willingness to turn towards, to breathe in, to really swallow whole, right? We can think of all of these kinds of ideas. The suffering of the world. And so I'm just going to stop there for a moment and have us all reflect on if we were trying these practices this week, and I gave us last week a few possibilities, and they included things like noticing our own moment of distress. Could we become non-solid enough, screen door-like? I've used that metaphor before, enough. Vaporous, non-solid enough to take on, then recognize that this is the suffering of all beings. This very human moment of distress is the truth of suffering of all beings, given our human condition, giving its shared reality. And that we could then make a very small statement in that moment of distress. And the statement that I gave you as a cue or a prompt would be something like, others feel this too. Right? Something that simple. And that this is the bodhicitta attitude. This is the bodhisattva heart. That we don't stay, rather than stay in the contraction of body, heart, and mind. And remember, once one does it, We know all the rest does it too, right? We're very clear about the reality of our own interconnectedness, and also the truth of then the interconnectedness, interdependence with not only our own mind, bodies, and hearts, but with others. And one of the things I suggested as a way of investigating that directly was to see if, rather than contract, we could begin the process of relative bodhicitta, opening right when we would otherwise close, non-solidifying when we would otherwise grab on, and actually see. My suggestion was, see if, as you were making that one statement, that opening, expanding truth of others just like me know or feel this too, if you could stick around for a couple more breaths to see the impact first to you. What did it do? That's going to be one of my questions and reflections in this day. How was it for you with that? And then the second investigation was, could you then feel, sense, or see what the truth was for others in that space? Because I notice, I have to tell you, and I did it again this week, a dramatic and distinct difference in the atmosphere, in the room. Now, I didn't say anything out loud. I didn't go, by the way, I'm a bodhisattva to be, I'm practicing, this is something I've been instructed to do. I hope you all appreciate this, because right now I'm going to be breathing in your shit. So just so you know, nothing like that. In fact, right, that's all that solidifying stuff we do. Could we really just open and expand the heart mind and see its effect? And I want to talk about that because I hope you did it. For those who couldn't remember, couldn't get to it, I understand also. I understand the fears as we tried to identify them somewhat last week. And Jim came up with words like overwhelm, choking, we're going to suffocate, become claustrophobic in this practice. And the truth is, that is an edge of the practice once we solidify the self. Well, guess what? Where we solidify the self, we will solidify suffering. Isn't it true? Every time. It will actually work in that order. Where we have solidified the self, we will now crash directly into and not be able to work with, metabolize, be with, or heal the cries of the world. Right? And
Seems,
I believe we know something about that. Yeah, Mike.
what I've noticed, it body, mind, and spirit, it flows both ways.
Yes.
And so this
Every
idea that you
way.
get caught in the body, I mean, if you're present enough, that the other part just flows the other way. And I don't think you ever get to a point where it only flows one direction. I think in this,
that's right,
this manifestation, it goes both ways, and you see the play and the interchange of body, mind, and spirit, which is all one.
yes,
It's not one or the other.
that's right. That's exactly right. So did you hear me say something that sounded contradictory, or you just
Not at
affirming?
all. Not at all. I heard exactly what I was feeling as you were talking.
All right, I want to make sure because I do know that we have had these discussions in our previous years and early stages in our training together. We've got 11 plus years, right?
Yeah.
In the works. Early on in our Bodhisattva training, one of the statements that was made, and I remember it to this day, is that it always flows body up. And actually, we know for sure that is not accurate. And I'm just talking about the neuroscience piece of it now, interestingly. We, we understand so much better than, by the way, 11 years ago, the polyvagal system, for example. And I'm just speaking really present moment, real time, nothing metaphoric or metaphysical. We actually, and there was a discussion that many years ago about, well, I always notice it as bottom up. Well, we know for sure that's not accurate. That, like you just said, every portal, right, it can be impacted, and it of course impacts all the others. And so how do we know this? Let's talk practicalities, and then we'll read the poem in practice. What we know is sometimes the body memory activates first, right? You weren't thinking particularly anything that you could identify, and yet, and it just happened for me the other day, I went to my husband, by the way, and I said, wow, I just am feeling a moment of heaviness. I might name it sadness. I don't even know if that's quite accurate, but I could literally feel a kind of physical manifestation, a kind of low energied moment. It came with a kind of sadness or grief or a sense of loss. And I had no thought that I could pick up about that at all. By the way, it doesn't make it true, does it? Just because we can't see a thought doesn't mean that a perception did not occur, right? So we never evaluate like that. But I picked it up first in the body. And so isn't that a beautiful opportunity right there to say, wait a minute, others just like me know this body experience, right? This kind of weightedness or a kind of energylessness, or, and we talked about it for a moment, of course, it wasn't resolved and didn't need to be, right? There was nothing to have to fix. It just was that moment. I was present to the moment. I tried to breathe open, not to get rid of, but to include. This is the Tonglen practice. Can I open, remembering that others also know and feel this? And sometimes we get it as a particular thought. The thought is, oh, my friend is missing her father who died many years ago. And I noticed that with that thought came a missing, a longing for the physicalness of my own father. Well, that was a thought. I could use that in that moment then, couldn't I? By saying, yes, others just like me know this idea of longing for the touch of a loved other, longing for the presence of a loved other, right? It could come that way. It could come simply as a feeling or a heart or felt sense, couldn't it? It could come as that feeling of just longing or desire or loss or grief or sadness, or what? We're practicing with both sides, by the way. When we have wealth, inner wealth, when things are beautiful, wonderful, true, connected with belonging, what was our practice? Could we make contact with that moment of wholeness, moment of healing, moment of strength, moment of health and wealth, and send it out? Could we make contact with it as well? And then on the medium of the breath, which is the instruction, this is the whole of the Bodhisattva path in relative term. The whole of the Bodhisattva path, taking in that which is difficult, hard, suffering, and painful, breathing out that which is healing, whole, wholesome, and good, right? And that's the point of the entire Tonglen, sending and taking. Remember, Tong meaning to let go of, to send out, to cultivate and release, and Len meaning to take in, to breathe in, to relieve. Okay. Thank you so much. Would anybody like to read this? This is a translated poem, by the way. And so I want you to know it doesn't, in translated poems, it doesn't always have quite the meter of, you know, an English versed poem. So you might just have to take your time with it. But is there anybody out there who'd like to give it a go? I thought it was a beautiful contact with the truth.
I'd like to read it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Seth. Can you see it all, Seth, or should I move it up?
Move it up a little bit. I don't know how much far it goes. Oh, sorry.
Can you see it there?
Sorry, fire engine going.
That's okay. Let's let it just pass. There's nothing like a nice opportunity for applause.
Okay, that's better. Can you move it up a little bit?
I did, and did you not see it? I think what Annika said is that I have to hit a refresh. Let me see if it works like this. I think it's called new share now for me. Let's try that. How's that look? It would start with, and don't you feel also?
Okay, yes, then I can read it all.
Thank you.
And don't you feel also perhaps a stormy sorrow on the skin of time, like a scar that opens again, there where the sky was uprooted? And don't you feel sometimes how that night gathers its tatters into an ominous bird, that there's a beating of wings against the roof, like a clash among immense spring leaves, struggling, or of hands clapping to summon you to death? And don't you feel afterwards someone exiled is crying, that there's an ember of a fallen angel on the threshold, brought suddenly like a beggar by an alien gust of wind? And don't you feel like me, that a house rolling toward the abyss runs over you with a crash of crockery shattered by lightning, with two empty shells embracing each other for an endless journey, with a screech of axles suddenly fractured like love's broken promises? And don't you feel then your bed sinking like the nave of a cathedral crushed by the fall of heaven, and that a thick, heavy water runs over your face till the final judgment? Again, it's the slime. Again, your heart thrown into the depths of the pool, prisoner once more among the waves closing a dream.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And I love this poem because it doesn't offer the simple resolution, does it? It doesn't say, and then everything was great. And then it all went away with the Super Bowl commercial, and we were happy once again. It doesn't cheapen the truth of suffering. And of course, it came from someone who doesn't have a culture where everything needs to be fixed, everything needs to be corrected, everything needs to be improved. We have to get out of, resolve everything. And I looked for a while to find a poem that didn't turn it all into golden light. It doesn't mean we can't and don't, but it also means, can we first bear the truth of suffering? And that's what this relative bodhicitta asks us to do. Now we're going to hold it beautifully in the ultimate bodhicitta of wide open, vast, and luminous space. But we don't first turn it into something else. We have to make contact with what it really is. And this requires immense bravery, immense fearlessness. It's too easy to turn the other way, right? And this practice says, no, not this. We're going to turn towards and breathe it in. And so we're going to practice that together. Now I have the recording on, just for those who are helping me remember that. So find yourself in a comfortable posture. I'm going to do just a little moment of guru yoga, only because Mike wasn't with us, and it really can invite that sense of wholeness. I'm just checking chat for a moment to make sure that we're okay. Yes, I will send the poem out. Okay, here we are. And then back up a little so we have a little space. And so before we strike the bell, let's see if we can't just bring a neurosomatic connection so we aren't fragmented, disconnected, and then consequently out of that fragmentation, inviting a certain kind of trauma. This is what we know and what we'll be investigating in our October retreat. So we're going to suture or sew the self a little bit together just while we sit here. So just finding the breath, breathing the whole body. Feeling the sense of the breath as it moves up and down, all the way up and beyond the head, and then all the way down and beyond the feet. We're not going to stay tight into the body. We're going to cultivate also that subtle and very subtle body so we don't solidify. And then we're going to continue to breathe a natural breath, feeling the sense of the ribs moving out to both sides, expanding, and then moving that sense of that out breath, that side breath, moving out beyond the body. And then we're going to open the breath as it moves forward, as the belly expands and returns to the spine, and also out the back. If we could imagine those back lungs, back ribs pressing back, opening us, and then settling us. The sixth direction breath, making contact with the body and moving beyond the body. No special breath, no special way or state to have to be. There is no becoming here. There is only this breath. And then I would like you to picture something of abiding goodness. It might be a person, it might be a pet, it might be a deity, it might be an amalgam of people, of things, of nature. Just see what comes as we bring to mind abiding goodness, our true nature. See what comes. In the traditional guru yoga, it is often a vision or image of an awakened one. So for you, that might be God, Spirit, Mohammed, Allah, Jesus, Buddha, maybe them all. But you're going to place them above your head here, right above the area of the fontanelle. And picture them smiling and radiating a glowing, warm light, radiant. And then we call on these entities, these beings, these special awakened ones, and we breathe them in right through the head, right down that whole polyvagal system. I don't think that's accidental, by the way. And we rest them in a shell here in the area of the heart, a holding place, a refuge, letting that radiant light, that goodness, that protection, that strength, that source of complete refuge be breathed in and rested, continuing to be radiant, boundless, all good, just as your true nature. And then if you choose, if this is comfortable for you, it's a part of this relative bodhicitta practice, you can call to mind the three refuge, the three jewels, the truth of our capacity for awakening, the refuge of Buddha. We can call to mind the refuge of all truth, the Dharma. And we can call to mind the refuge of our spiritual friends, those we know and those we don't know, the Sangha. And we vow to be wakeful to those refuge. And I believe that these points of protection are useful. I think they shore us up. They remind us of our wholeness, and they remind us that we are not alone. So we don't go into that egoic solidifying solid sense out of that fear. We are protected from all sides, surrounded by goodness, breathing in and out and beyond this limited physical body, preparing ourselves for this practice of sending and taking. May this practice be of benefit to all beings, everywhere. Countless beings in all directions. May we offer this practice to them, that it may be of benefit and a refuge. And so we're simply going to rest in that radiant breath. Breathing beyond the body, but including the body. Relative and ultimate bodhicitta, right here. That which is true of this body, this mind, and that which is beyond it that is also available in here. The truth of boundlessness, of emptiness, of shunyata. The truth of this relative human life, and the existing truth beyond it, also right here. And so the way this works often for me, and it's just one possibility, I sort of place the attention out in open space and let the breath move in and out. But the first attention is actually out in open space, and I breathe into it and out from it, making contact with the truth of the physical body, but not being limited by it. And see how that works for you. Resting the mind where there is no sense of limit. There is no sense of separation, no sense of disconnect, where we stay open to the interconnection, the emptiness, the boundlessness of all things. And so the first instruction is to rest in ultimate bodhicitta. It often comes with a strike of the bell. And so I'm going to offer that. And the idea in the strike is to actually follow the truth out beyond both the strike of the bell, the sound of the bell, and the end of the sound. That it actually continues on infinitely. So the strike of ultimate bodhicitta. And it says, with that flash, let it open your heart wide, boundless. Rest in the boundlessness. And as we rest in boundlessness, we notice thoughts, we notice sensations, we notice sounds, and we see their true nature. We see their birth, their appearance, their changing, and their disappearance back into the boundlessness. The body is soft, the breath is natural. There is no object other than boundless open space. And we're not controlling, manipulating, we're not making anything happen. We're not trying to keep the objects, we're not trying to get rid of them. None of this is all wasted effort. You don't need to bother. Just notice that they come and go on their own. The guru and the breath radiating out in all directions. Remembering that that guru, whatever that is for you, is not separate from you, not some other entity. It is actually your true nature. And in that radiant true nature, we have the capacity, by our very presence in this relative world, to transform. And we're not transforming something separate. We're not transforming the other. We're transforming actually something about our own human characteristics and qualities. We're transforming this potential for fear, for shutting down, for closing off, for turning away. We're resting in our true nature. And by that nature, awakening. And as we rest in our true nature, in our inherent wealth, we can begin to simply send that out. Sending it out in all directions, letting it radiate out. On the medium of the breath. This is not the nostril breath. This is not the lungs breath. This is the Buddha breath. The breath of awakening. The breath of goodness. The breath of our true nature. And then I'd like you to move into step 2. Now that we have activated ultimate bodhicitta, we can rest in it well. We can then call to mind a difficulty or suffering of another or of yourself. It all counts. And just open to that rather than go hunting. We're not seeking, we're just letting what comes come. But just opening to that truth, the truth of suffering, the truth of difficulty, of confusion, greed. And make contact with the moment. Remembering the place, remembering the players. It may be just yourself or another or others. And I just let whatever comes come. And as it happens, the thing I'm reflecting on, for example, wasn't actually a moment. It wasn't an event. It's an internal feeling that I'm making contact with, and I'm going to make a choice to stay with that. And then I'm just going to begin to let it be. I'm breathing into it. It's actually residing in the body for me. It may be more of a thought or an event for you. It's all fine, but just breathing it in, letting it be known by this body, heart, and mind as you breathe it in. Seeing if you can stay soft, receptive, inclusive, open, and allowing. Acknowledging this as a moment of difficulty. And willingly turning towards it, moving into it, getting closer. And so making contact with this in as many ways as possible. We just named a couple. We can put the mind there, we can put and open the body experience. to this experience, and we can open the heart, this ever radiant, expanding heart, to include it there as well. And let it be on the medium of the breath, with each in-breath, breathing it in. And if you could imagine that as you're breathing it in, that radiant light, that open, empty, boundless space makes room. And not only embraces it, but brings that light of awareness to it, shining that bright and radiant light, ultimate bodhicitta, right on it. But we're not getting rid of it. It's included in the embrace, breathing it in. And as we're breathing it in, the very willingness is an opening. The very acknowledging and recognizing that it is suffering is an opening. The very allowing is an opening. And as we breathe it in, it's transformed by our radiant true nature, by the presence of awareness, by the activated compassion at the truth of suffering. There's only one response. That is to open, to move closer, to hold, to heal. That's all that's available. And as we breathe it in and are transmuting it back into that light, back into that emptiness, we send it out, fresh, clean, radiant, light. And I began with my own experience and what I'm noticing just as I'm breathing it in, making contact, allowing, receiving, opening. I can feel the light hitting it, kind of refracting, and it becomes particled, lighter. And then I send out that goodness. And what naturally happens is I send it out for all those who know this too. And I set the intention for that sending. It might go to one other. It might move in all directions. It might be something for a moment you hold for your own suffering. It's all workable. And so we take it in with the in-breath. And we send out the goodness. And since it's radiating from our own boundless hearts, it naturally does offer a kind of purification, a strength, and a healing to your own body. And for some people, as I said, it's just important to let that happen first. Mine just naturally went beyond the body. And so I let it. But if it doesn't, don't push it. And see if you can stay in contact with this perception of suffering this experience. Staying soft in the body, open and spacious in the heart mind. Breathing it in. Letting it be radiated by that Buddha nature. And sending it out. Enlightened. And then calling beyond the specific one, if you could think of someone else or just others generally who know this too. We then, in the third step, expand that to include all beings. And this is where that radiant light moving in all directions can be helpful. We can touch all beings everywhere without exception with this healing, warm goodness, with this tender heart, the heart that hears the cries of the world. And if you notice a block, if you notice resistance, if you notice fear or overwhelm, you can then just breathe in once again for others who know this resistance, this fear, this confusion, this worry, just like me. And breathe it in and offer the merits and the blessings to yourself and all those others just like me who don't want this either. And see what you notice about the way the contact with the suffering changes or stays the same, whatever you're noticing there. Mine is very much dissolved, actually. And when that happens, if that happens, it doesn't always, there's no demand for that. We can just, once again, either rest in the open space, in that radiant, boundless space, and wait to see if something else comes. Or you can decide that's it, I'm good. And just rest back. The breathing in the Tibetan tradition can come with the visualization of the thick, dark, black smoke as we breathe in the suffering. Mine was internal, so I was breathing in that contractedness I was breathing in the sense of stuckness. I was breathing in and with the sense of solidness, which would be somewhat equal to that breath being dark and black and foggy and heavy and maybe hot. And once it touches into the tender and radiant heart, like water on coal, it vaporizes the particles, it deconstructs with the pure light of awareness, of compassion, of the goodness of our true nature. It is transformed. And then naturally, once again, just using myself as an example, I'm remembering that others don't have this practice. Others don't have the current strength, the skill, the training, the supports, not of the refuge, not of the guru, not of the sangha, and not of others. And I'm breathing in for them. All those others who know this too, who don't have the supports. May I breathe it in for them. And send them relief. And you may keep this more universal and then allow it to get specific as it does. A few people have come to mind who I know are currently in struggle in a similar way. And I'm sending this out breath directly to them, as well as all beings. And this radiant light of awareness turns towards whatever suffering is present. And if not, just sends out that goodness, that relief, all that merit in all directions. Remember, the beauty of the out breath is it will send whatever is needed. And so if there's no specific, it simply sends out healing, relief, good medicine. If it is specific, send out a blanket, a warm cup of coffee, a friend. And then we're going to let go of all visualizations. We're going to let go of the medium of the breath. We're simply going to rest back in the vast, open, radiant space. Resting in the noble truths, the truth of suffering, the truth that all suffering is built on causes and conditions. And once we know those causes and conditions through inquiry, willingness, we know the way to the end of suffering. And this is part of the path. We're turning towards the opening, moving closer, breathing it in, and sending out relief. May we all have happiness and the causes for happiness. May we all be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we all rejoice at our good fortune and send out that good fortune to others. May we rest in the great arms of wisdom and compassion. Free from greed, free from hatred, free from ignorance. And may this practice contribute. So I'd like to have the community really talk about this today. I'd like to know what your experience has been with the practice, if you've been able to practice this week, including that very gentle practice of calling to mind others know this or feel this too, and what your experience was as you were doing that this week. You may want to share what your experience was in the practice today. So I'd love to hear from you. I think it's important that you hear from each other in this practice. Remember, this is not the easiest practice, but I have to say, I know together, as we train and practice together, that it is workable, even in moments of difficulty. So come on, say hello, and then we'll talk about this. Where do the homeless go? Dennis has said. They go directly into the refuge of your hurt. That's where they go, at least for right now. You're very calling them to mind, Dennis. Your very willingness to consider them, to be concerned for them, and to intention their well-being. They are invited directly in to the refuge of your hurt. And then, of course, because of our interconnection, all of our hurts. Mike, how was that for you? I don't remember when we last practiced Tonglen together.
Today. A couple of things kind of floated through my mind. One of them, when you were instructing on the guru meditation, a little poem came to mind, and it's row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life was but a dream. You know, and it just kind of flows that way. The other thing that struck me, you talked about transforming your feelings, you know, from your body, maybe to your mind, to your spirit. And the way I kind of see it, it's really more of a manifestation as opposed to transforming, because when I would transform something, initially I was starting with a thing, and you know, I've kind of moved, you know, from that idea of things, and when, you know, a feeling pops up, it manifests into, you know, maybe it just gets stronger in the body, or maybe it manifests in spirit and flows back the other way. So I kind of don't look at it as a transformation, as opposed to more of just an opening to infinite potential.
Yep, that's the transformation I'm talking about. It's not very solid, actually. In fact, I tried to use this idea of particles or light.
Right.
It's actually, we would say, Mike, you're helping me, thank you. We would say seeing its true nature. So you are in fact correct. It's not because the thing is being changed at all. It's because it is being seen clearly.
Yeah, and there's no getting rid of it. I mean, this idea of you know, form. I mean, form is the beautiful opportunity to experience the true nature of all things. Without this form, this bag of slime that we talked about in the poem, allows us to, you know, gives an opportunity to see things in a clearer way, perhaps.
Yeah, in form and formlessness, actually. So I like what you're saying about not requiring transformation, meaning changing. I think you're right. I think it's actually not accurate as all the language fails. And I do think seeing its true nature in form and in formlessness
Yeah.
is true. And that we call ultimate bodhicitta,
Mm,
because ultimate holds the relative.
right.
We don't need to get rid of anything.
You can't.
You- I haven't noticed I can. So yeah, I like to pretend like I'm a fairy godmother. It's just not gone that well. And what I was saying to Dennis is, by the very openness, by the very inclusion, by the very willingness to hold not only our experience, but recognize the truth of our shared human experience, we are, something wonderful is happening. Yeah. I see some chat, so I'm gonna, thanks Mike, always. I'm gonna look here and see, because we have a lot of beautiful conversation through chat as well. We had news this week of terrible suffering and hurt going on. Yes, it's true. And the practice helped me feel less helpless in engaging with that news. I could hold and make space for the suffering a little more easily. That's right. When we don't solidify, we were saying, actually there is the space we need is available. When we don't contract, when we don't solidify, which is not our true nature. Anyway, it is the direct experience of fear. Then the truth is there's room there for holding whatever is happening. And I used the example last week, didn't I, of my fear at not being able to hold my mother in her grief and loss of my stepfather. And how what I could do, though, is recognize that and breathe for her and then for me, not knowing what to do, and then realizing that we were both in exactly the same place. And then just that bigger expanse of breathing for us both. And then it even went beyond to breathing for the whole room. All the people who didn't know what to say, all the people who didn't know what to do, all the people who didn't know how to respond to this. And then it went even beyond the room to all people who know grief, all people who feel powerless or inadequate or deficient in knowing how to help reduce suffering. So yeah, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that you made contact with the truth of that. And then it says, knowing that the suffering that comes with loss of love and how others just like me share in the same. That's right. And now, Chris, I'm so sorry. I know about this. Chris's father is facing the loss of his wife of many years due to a significant illness, right? And we can hold the truth of impermanence together because we will all know this truth, the truth of loss of our property, the truth of the loss of our health, the truth of the loss of those we love, and the loss of all that we hold dear, says the suttas. And so what remains then is that heir to our goodness, heir to our capacities for being with, for bearing witness, for being present, that this matters, even in the face of those significant and profound losses. So yes. Dennis, we are never traveling by ourselves. That's right, Dennis. Scattering or gathering along our way. That's right. We will all know these truths as being in this human life. And to the extent that we are willing to open. I think we then find refuge also in this. There are many, many others who have come before us, who have known these truths, who have held them and evolved, so that rather than just contract, rather than fall apart, and it doesn't mean we don't do that also, by the way, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that even in the face of the greatest griefs, there is an open, tender heart space that can hold this too, even when we're pretty sure we don't have what it takes. That's just one of our fear stories, actually. What else?
Diana, good morning. It's Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
Hello. I wanted to thank you for the image of the screen door. I've been knowing about and practicing Tonglen for maybe 5 years, and it's always tripped me up, the image of smoke and whatnot, because I'm quite allergic to smoke, and it just makes me shut down and solidify my suffering and whatever suffering I'm trying to transmute for others. So the screen door is particularly helpful today. Thank you. And regarding the instruction from last week, I walk our dog every morning, and we live in a beautiful neighborhood, lots of trees, just like you would imagine the Pacific Northwest. And it was very easy for me this week to feel that beauty and radiate it out to everyone like me. So thank you for that instruction also.
Wonderful. I am so happy to hear that. You know, we can get, unfortunately, Maureen, just like you're saying, so thank you, we can get into a feeling of poverty, can't we, if we don't balance our ability to make contact with the truth of suffering, with the truth of beauty, with the truth of connectedness, with the truth of nature, with the truth of our capacity and the capacity of others to hold each other in grief-stricken, difficult times of suffering. And so we can't just point there, can we? Because we've run out, essentially, of that goodness. At least our felt sense is that. So we practice breathing in it all, right? Remembering the truth of the 10,000 sorrows and the 10,000 joys and beauty. And yes, it is in fact in the solidifying. So I'm glad the screen door has helped you. It has helped me to, rather than contract, confine, and lose space, lose the open space. We keep opening, including, expanding, which is why the practice of ultimate bodhicitta actually happens before this practice, so that we can remember our true nature. And I tried to focus a lot on it today, didn't I, on purpose, so that we remember who we really are as we turn towards the truth of difficulty and suffering. And we don't trust that in ourselves until we practice, by the way. We don't trust we're enough. We don't trust we have what it takes. And I don't mean the us, meaning the small Diana, me. I mean that ultimate Buddha nature that we are all capable of and are in fact training in. That is capable. And as I practice, I see the evidence that in fact it does matter, it is there. And when I can access it, both through training and sometimes spontaneously, because there's nothing else to do but breathe, I see its impact. And that was one of my inquiries. Has anybody been able to do this practice with another without the arrows pointing at, look at me, I'm doing it, look at me breathing, not helpful, not useful, don't do it. Were you able to get any qualitative felt sense difference as you did that? Could you feel this is shifted? At least I'm not holding it in the same way. If not, wow, I'm noticing, and I noticed my own body change. My body opened, my heart became more central. As I was just breathing in for another who was present, there was a statement of the felt sense. And it happened several times. I'm wondering if anybody else has had that experience. I want this to be real. You know, this is real practice, real experience. It's not just, again, something head fixed. And I want you to see its real life, real time impact. Does anybody have that experience?
You just have to be paying attention.
That's right, Mike. Because you can't not see it if you're paying attention.
It comes in all directions, and it is amazing when you get to, when it manifests in a way that you can feel it. I mean, I think I know that it's manifesting all the time, and you know, you're not necessarily going to feel it, but I also believe it has, you know, a wonderful impact on, you know, this consciousness, really. I mean,
That's right.
at that level is where the beauty of it is. And then when you can pay attention and manifest it into the form, you know, it's gives me chills.
Exactly right. That's right.
I had an experience this week on Thursday, actually, with this. This is Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. I woke up on Thursday, and I don't know if I woke up this way, but just felt really heavy, and I could feel sadness, even thinking about just like a heaviness for the world. And I sat with it, and you know, I did the Tonglen, and I still felt a little bit of the sadness, and I took it a step further, and I reached out to two of my friends who, prior to the pandemic, we were walking once a week. And anyhow, I don't need to go into detail about that. We've been social distancing, but not any exercise, because unless it's low tide, we can't be together. And I just said, I know it's not low tide. Is anybody available just to even take a short walk? I really need you. And it was a bit of, you know, a bit of adjusting to figure out a time. Yeah. And they both came near my place, and I live right near Torrey Pines High School. And we just went in the parking lot and we talked. And what was beautiful about it is we were all feeling the same thing in different ways. We all shared about like this kind of heaviness of the world and heaviness of what was happening and how we needed each other. And it was really, and I definitely felt lighter. It didn't go away. You know, nothing is going away, but it definitely transmuted to something that was more workable. And I was able to acknowledge, instead of getting into something else, I was able to reach out, and it may not have happened. You know, it may have been the next day or 2 days later, but yeah.
Beautiful. It's the truth. We're making very important points about this, so I want to underline them. It isn't because we then don't feel what we're feeling. It's because we've created a space, in fact, to hold it completely. And so I agree. I don't think it means that magically it all just goes away. And what Cindy said that's so important is, and the sadness, the grief, the pain becomes holdable, workable. And I don't mean because then it leaves. This is one of the myths in spiritual bypassing that I think we all can get into, which is, well, what's wrong? It's still here. Well, right. You just made contact with the truth of suffering. It isn't because it magically disappears. It's because we become capable, that we become larger, that we become more spacious, that we become more open, that we can hold the truth of it, not that it's supposed to just evaporate into emptiness. It sometimes does, as mine did today, by the way. And during the week, interestingly, it did not, and I wasn't seeking that. I was seeking, can I be with this? Is there space for this? More and more. And the answer, more and more, as I was practicing with it, was yes, that very heaviness that I was noticing, that very grief that I was noticing, the very reality of loss, of others' aloneness in that loss and separation that I was making contact with. And I hope we don't become so spiritual or so, I don't know what you want to, that we don't feel the truth of that. That's not the point of the practice. This is relative bodhicitta, means you will know this. And that means to be open, not to be just spending all my time converting it into something else. It simply means opening into my truest nature, open, receptive, and compassionate. The only, I said, response ultimately. And yes, it is in its being held. It is also healed, but it doesn't mean it magically disappears. So be watchful for those who may have been thinking, oh, it's not working because it's not going away. No, you're turning towards it. You have the courage, bravery, and resource to hold it. In fact, somebody here, I think it was Taryn, thank you, Taryn, wrote this very thing. I could feel a sense of expansion that felt spacious and capable. It was helpful to tap into that while in contact with the difficult moment. Not away from, not separate or disconnected, quite the opposite. How amazing to feel both expansion and contraction in the same body at the same time. This is exactly right. That radiating light helped me to feel well resourced for holding it all right in the truth of suffering. Not that we separate or get away. This has been one of my confusions personally for at least 9 or 10 years of my practice, was why is suffering still here? Why is it not gone away? Why is it that I have to still confront it? Why is it that I have to feel this? Why feel it more? I had a beautiful teacher who said, you have what it takes. And I'd be going like, I don't think you got the wrong person. I don't know who you're thinking I am over here, but I don't know if I've got this. And her confidence, as my confidence in you, is that we do have it. And yes, it does require training, practice, remembering, and inviting. All of that is true. And I hope that our practice today in helping you get to that, make contact with the truth of your own nature, your own expansive, spacious, luminous capacity is also made available to you. We're going to continue this week by breathing in, turning towards the difficult when we can. You'll see it. So there won't really be anything else you have to do. You're going to see it. This week for me was making a lot of contact with my own. And I was very grateful for that because I know I can get distant enough, rational enough not to feel it as much as is true. And so there I was, just feeling it and feeling it, holding it, embracing it, breathing it, and sending out that capacity for others. So I hope you can feel that too. It's already a little after 9 o'clock, so I want to end our time. I feel like we did a pretty good job on our merit before we ended the practice. I will try to send this practice out to you. Thank you to Leslie, who is doing such a beautiful job now that she's in Israel and settled a little bit more, helping us get these practices online at encinitasmindfulness.org under Zoom meditations. So if you're looking for these practices, please know that they are there. I have sent these out, but we've had a little bit of challenge with the passwords. I'm just sending the passwords that Zoom sends. For some reason, they don't always work. I don't know what that is. They are working for me because I do try them first. I just want you to know that these resources, in addition to the ones we have already named, are available. And yes, thank you to Leslie for that continuing effort, even when she's not here in the States with us. I really appreciate that. May we continue to use the medium of the breath, to take in the difficulty, to be with it, to bear witness, to open and become spacious, and sending out whatever relief might be available and possible for us. May we all awaken, and in that awakening, may we all be free. I want to thank you all for your practice today. Thank you so much. Blessings to all of you. Thank you for your contributions and your sharing. May this practice and all its blessings and benefits serve all beings. Thank you so much. Blessings to all. See you next week.